Hello everyone, welcome back to Rewired with your host Khadija Farosh. For those of you just joining us, this podcast is all about differentiating between fact and fiction through exploring our teenage minds and psychology. Now I don't want to spoil the rest of the episode, so I want you all to sit back, relax, and enjoy. Have you ever listened to a song and thought, how does this song know exactly what I'm feeling? Or have you found a song from years ago and it's like you time traveled back into your old self? Or maybe when everything feels too chaotic, the only thing that makes sense is putting your headphones on and letting somebody else's music speak for you. Music isn't just a form of entertainment. Psychologically, it influences crucial parts of our lives like memory, emotion, and even personal identity. Sometimes it really does understand us better than the people around us might. Today we're going to be talking about the psychology behind music, and this episode is going to be divided into 4 key sections. First, we're talking about the science of music and emotion, then the links between music and identity, then music and memory, and finally, music and coping. Let's start with emotion. Why and how does music make us feel different things? So essentially, when we listen to music, or more specifically songs that we enjoy or like, our brain releases a neurochemical called dopamine, and this is the same neurochemical that's involved in moments of reward or motivation. And this release of the chemical is strongest just before our favorite parts of a certain song. So for instance, during a beat drop or a shift in melody, or when an instrument you like starts playing. And this happens because of something called musical anticipation. So our brains are waiting and preparing for moments of pleasure. And examples of this release of the chemical can be seen when we get chills or goosebumps when listening to something that we like. The limbic system, which includes structures like the amygdala and the hypothalamus, is activated during emotional music, whether happy or sad or anything that kind of evokes a certain emotion in you. And these areas are responsible for processing emotion, meaning that music doesn't just sound emotional, but your brain treats it as if it is actual emotion. What's more interesting is studies that use fMRI scans, which are medical imaging techniques that measure your brain activity, show that listening to sad music can actually activate similar brain regions that are activated when you're feeling true sadness. But this takes place with a layer of aesthetic distance. Aesthetic distance is the psychological gap between an individual's perception of a reality and the artistic representation of that reality, which is the music. And that's why sometimes when we listen to sad music, it can feel oddly nice or give you a sense of satisfaction or even pleasure. I did recently read a study conducted to analyze the emotions evoked in individuals who listen to sad music. An analysis revealed that although the sad music was perceived as sad or tragic, the listeners didn't experience this tragic emotion to an equivalent degree. This essentially means that the listeners were able to understand and comprehend that the music was meant to evoke a sense of tragedy or sounded sad, but they didn't feel that sadness to an equivalent measure as how sad the music actually was. In fact, the participants felt more romantic emotion through feelings of fascination or love, and blithe emotion through feelings of merry or feeling like dancing even, than they perceived such emotions when listening to the sad music. So they were able to perceive the sadness, but they didn't feel the sadness, and they were able to feel romantic emotion and blithe emotion, but they weren't really able to perceive that emotion in the music. Which is again why we might feel oddly nice when listening to sad music. So it's clear that sad music can evoke complex emotions and emotional responses, which are both positive and negative, and sad music has been linked to various psychological effects. And these effects can vary depending on individual differences, the specific musical piece, the context of listening, whatever took place before you listened, whatever prompted you to listen to that song, etc. Now let's talk about taste. More specifically, how music taste contributes to identity building and social belonging. And when I say this, I don't mean I like jazz and you like rock, so we're different people. I mean, why does our taste in music feel so personal, and why do connections formed through shared music tastes feel so intimate, for example? So adolescence is a time of identity formation, We're still figuring out who we are, what matters to us, what we believe in, what our opinions are, and how we want to be perceived in public settings. Music becomes one of the most powerful tools for expressing that. Psychologists recently have described music as a form of emotional self-regulation and identity work, and this means that it doesn't just reflect who we are, but it helps shape who we want to become in the future. And sharing music eventually with this becomes kind of an emotional shorthand or a shortcut. So when you send someone a playlist that you made, or you find a friend who likes the same artist as you, it feels as if you formed an instant bond. Music taste has also had strong correlations with personality in psychological research, which is another reason why sharing it might feel so personal. It's like you're taking out a piece of your own personality and just giving it off to the world. In an older study, researchers asked more than 36,000 participants worldwide to rate more than 104 different musical styles. They also asked these same participants to fill out the Big Five personality test, which we discussed in an older episode, and they provided some information about their favorite artists and their favorite musical styles. The results of this experiment indicated that personality and music taste are indeed linked, but of course other individual differences and factors influence that relationship. I wanted to go through some of the personality traits that the study linked to certain musical styles, and comment down below whether you think the associations between these different traits and musical styles are accurate to you. So the first one that was cited was pop music, and the people who described that they liked pop music also described themselves as extroverted, honest, and conventional. Although pop music lovers were also described as hardworking and had high self-esteem, researchers suggested that they're more uneasy and that they're less creative than those that like other musical styles. I believe this is because pop music is more mainstream and can be shared globally, which is why they wouldn't really read into the technicalities of the music or the lyricism. Next is rap or hip-hop, and despite the stereotype that rap lovers are aggressive or violent, the researchers found no such link. However, they did find that rap fans tended to have higher self-esteem and were generally more outgoing than fans of other styles. Next is country music, and these fans typically identified as hardworking, conventional, outgoing, and definitely conservative. Although country music frequently centers on themes of heartbreak, people who preferred it tended to be more emotionally stable, per se. And they also ranked lower in openness to experience because of their conservative nature and their conventional nature. Next is rock and heavy metal likers. So the people who liked rock and heavy metal, they often project images of like anger and aggression, but this study found that such fans tend to be more gentle and creative and definitely introverted. They also tended to have lower self-esteem levels than people who liked country music, for example. Next is indie. So fans of the indie genre or alternative genres registered as introverted, intellectual, and creative, but they are also less hardworking and gentle than fans of other styles. Anxiousness and low self-esteem were other notable personality characteristics of people who like this genre of music. Next is dance. So people who prefer dance music were typically outgoing, assertive, and open to experience, but they ranked lower than others in gentleness, mostly because of how outgoing they are perceived to be. Finally, the people who cited liking classical music were generally somewhat introverted, but at ease with themselves. So they're calmer than, say, for example, the people who like dance music. Creativity and healthy self-esteem were also common among them. And with all these traits and with all these personality links, music really is an opening to our personalities, to an extent at least, which is why sharing what we listen to may feel intimidating at times and why bonds can be so strong when built on shared music tastes. Music doesn't just live in the present, it also lives in memory. The hippocampus, which plays a key role in memory formation in the brain, is highly active when we listen to music tied to past events that we may have experienced. This is why hearing a certain song from your childhood or a song you played during a rough time in your life can bring back not just what happened, but how exactly you felt in the moment. When music draws on our attention, this increases the likelihood that it will be sewn or encoded into our memory, together with the details of a life event. And this then means that it's able to serve as an effective cue for remembering this event years later. And that's why, when we hear a song from our past, we may be brought back into the moment and how we felt. This phenomenon is sometimes called music-evoked autobiographical memory, or MEAM. And it's why people with Alzheimer's, for example, or memory loss disorders can still remember songs from decades ago. You may have seen people with Alzheimer's being brought certain instruments that they used to play in their younger years, and you may have seen videos of them being able to play pieces that they used to know on that instrument, and this is sometimes associated with MEAM. There's also a concept called the reminiscence bump, where people tend to recall songs from adolescence and early adulthood more clearly or vividly than any other life period that they've experienced. So to summarize, the playlists that you make now in your teenage years are probably the ones that will stick with you for life. So if music has had such a strong influence on emotions and our cognitive system, this raises the question of whether the memory-enhancing effect of emotional music can be used to enhance cognitive performance. And a study was actually conducted, and it examined whether everyday music listening can facilitate the recovery of different cognitive functions after a stroke, which is a severe neurological event. So the results of the study revealed that the recovery of verbal memory and focused attention improved significantly in the group of patients who listened to their favorite music on a daily basis, compared to the patients who listened to audiobooks or no listening material at all. Besides the improvement in cognitive functions, there was also a substantial mood improvement in the patients who listened to music every day. They were less depressed and less confused compared to the people who didn't receive any listening material or only exclusively listened to audiobooks. So not only does music allow for recognition of memories through MEAM, but it can also improve memory development and recovery after neurological events. So if music taps into our brain, our memory, and our identity, it's no surprise that we also may use it to cope during hard times. For teens especially, music becomes a key tool for emotional regulation. According to research, teens use music to match their moods, distract from stress, and even process trauma. One of our identified musical functions is solace, which means that music is used to comfort or soothe during distress. Additionally, neurodivergent teens, such as those with ADHD or autism, often use music as auditory regulation, which is essentially something predictable or controllable that they're given when the world might feel too overwhelming to keep them grounded and give them that sense of control that they're seeking. Teenagers with anxiety disorders or sensory sensitivities also may do this to also have that same sense of control. Genres also influence this need for music to cope. Angry music can help release frustration, sad music can help you feel your emotions, instrumental music or classical music might help calm your nervous system without directly demanding your attention. So you can even just have it in the background and you'd still see some kind of improvement in your anxiousness or tension that you may be feeling. Music therapy is additionally a clinical and evidence-based technique that uses music to address individual goals within a therapy setting or therapeutic setting. It involves using music to improve a person's physical, emotional, cognitive, and even social needs. Music therapists design sessions with specific goals in mind, like pain management, reducing anxiety, or improving communication skills. And common music therapy techniques include active music making, which can involve singing, playing instruments, songwriting, or improv. Receptive music listening, which involves actively listening to music and reflecting on its impact on emotions and thoughts. Lyrical analysis, which is exploring the meaning and emotional content of song lyrics. And then movement and dance, which is using music to encourage physical activity and expression. Benefits of music therapy include improved mental health. It can reduce symptoms of anxiety, depression, and stress, enhanced communication and social skills, with improvement of verbal and nonverbal communication, increased self-awareness and self-esteem, pain management and pain perception reduction, and finally, improved cognitive function, like we discussed in the link between music and memory. So why does your playlist really know you better than you do? That's because music is a mirror, and it reflects your feelings, your memories, your needs, sometimes before you even notice them. It lets you feel things you may have been trying to avoid or suppress, and it allows you to process your emotions or events that you may have experienced in the past. And that's why I've created at least 15 playlists on Spotify for every possible circumstance that could ever take place in my life. It helps me cope, it helps me understand my feelings, and it helps me become more self-aware, while of course receiving an amazing form of entertainment. Alright, that's a wrap for today's episode. If you want to keep the conversation going, you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at OfficialRewired. My email is khadija.farrash@gmail.com if you'd like to contact me there. That's khadija.farrash@gmail.com. Or if you're feeling extra chatty, join our community Discord where you can hang out and discuss this and upcoming episodes, have access to early snippets and announcements, and a couple more special perks. You can find all the links to my socials in the show notes below and in the Linktree in my description. Don't forget to drop a comment, question, feedback, or anything you'd like to let me know of down below if you're feeling extra generous, and if you really enjoyed, a 5-star rating on Spotify or a like and subscribe on YouTube would mean the world. I can't wait to chat with you again soon, and see you in the next episode.